What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what you been playing?
Yeah, so it's mainly more updates to everything we've been doing. It's been a little while. Obviously, Happy New Year to everyone out there.
Happy New Year.
And it's our first New Year episode. And I've been just kind of cranking through some of the games I've still been playing. I had a small issue with the Halo campaign. You and I discussed this off cam. I did get the campaign glitch where the game no longer loads your campaign. I had to delete my save, uninstall the game, reinstall it, and start the campaign fresh because 343 had no workaround, or they still don't have a workaround. So I've restarted that. I don't have much more to say because I am now just treading the same stuff, collecting the same upgrades I had. Luckily, the gameplay again is so solid that I just can skip the cutscenes, the few that they are, and I'm just going like base to base, getting the Marines done. And of course, obviously, still playing a lot of the multiplayer. I did the little Christmas challenge week that they had. I haven't been able to play this recent one, which is the Samurai event again. That progression system is just so rough. They want you to literally play like hours every single day to do it, so really impossible for me. But on PlayStation, I have it was about time, obviously timing is working out. I restarted a Horizon Zero Dawn, and obviously we have the sequel coming next month, fairly soon, hopefully. After some delays and stuff like that, it's worked out, and I've always had a weird relationship with Horizon where I remember not getting it during launch. I didn't get to way later, and it never really jived with me. And then a second time when I went in, I played a lot, and so going through that, and just the more I play this one, the more I'm excited to see a lot of these things expand. This was obviously Guerrilla's first attempt and a very successful attempt in switching genres. So knowing that this is their second outing is going to be obviously they know the system, they're ready, they have the different mechanics, and I've gone pretty dark from all the trailers. I remember seeing the initial announcement trailer, and I scrubbed through one of those state of plays where they showed like 15 minutes of gameplay. Everything else I've been in the dark about. I have no idea of what's going on there. I remember there's like a debacle that her face was rounder.
Oh yeah.
One cuts. But I'm super excited to do it. And what a great game. I really like this game. It runs really well on PS5. It's playing on the PS5 patch they did. I finally got a SSD in my PS5 so I can finally have everything downloaded the correct way, and it's really good. It feels really fluent. I'm really excited to see what the sequel has for me in Horizon. So, and then that'll be fairly soon. The only other thing I've been playing, I'm still going through the Danganronpa games on Switch, and now this is a series that I love. I know you really enjoy it too. So I'm getting to pretty much crescendoing the ending of Danganronpa 2. Which is really exciting because I don't really remember it well. So when you're playing with these deaths, and this is obviously where that overarching storyline, which I'm not going to be spoiling because this is still kind of an underrated series, but that True Hope Academy storyline that's sort of behind everything is starting to reveal itself more. People aren't who they say they were, and it's all really revealing, which is really exciting to see. Because again, I don't even know if I just don't remember most of this. It's been a long time since I played these on Vita, so playing it on Switch just makes so much more sense. Obviously, a couple hours a day, and I'm really excited. I'm itching to get through it to really get into 3, which, obviously gameplay mechanics. I don't know what's that different, but I know people really like to speak of 3, of the story plots, the characters, the integration to some of the anime that they did. So I'm really I'm on the cusp of ready to jump onto to Danganronpa V3, so really excited for that. And the last thing to play, and I'll admit it, it's just kind of a hype thing. I've watched Netflix's Arcane League of Legends show.
Oh, yeah.
Really enjoyed it, and obviously kind of put me down the rabbit hole. And I've been playing League of Legends.
Oh.
Now, I'm not a league. I played League of Legends years ago. Obviously, I think it was with you and that we dabbled in it. And it was really never my thing. Having a little bit more context of who these characters are help. I obviously play very casually. I don't jump to the PvP. I do the against bots basically, and I see the mechanic of it, especially when I'm trying to do other stuff and I really only have one arm to play the game. You can pretty much play the game with one hand on mouse, and it just makes sense. So I do see the sort of the loop you get into with these characters and the gameplay and the tower situation. I don't know how long that'll last. I don't know if it's just because I'm on a high right now because I really enjoyed the show, and these characters, and obviously these characters are in the League of Legends game, so it's all really just kind of fitting for me. Again, I can probably see once these big hitter games come out. Obviously, Dying Light 2's around the corner. Horizon. I don't know if I'll do Elden Ring, but once all these big games come out, I don't know if I'll have the time. Because and the world knows League of Legends matches are minimum 28 minutes or something like that. So what I can get done in 28 minutes in a real game is one match in League. So we'll see how that rolls out. But I have to give it credit because I do like to. I don't like to, but I usually kind of come at MOBAs a lot. This Smite for like their weird crossovers. I think Smite did like a Transformers crossover once, or it's still doing something like that. And I come at it, but I have to give respect to League on the world it's created. There's like some odd 160 heroes in the game now, and it's ridiculous, and so many microtransactions. But I gotta give it to them for sticking through it, finally expanding the lore into things that we can enjoy. Obviously, when they drop that fighting game, I'm there for sure now, if it ever really comes out. But it's exciting. So again, not been playing anything the most exciting, really just treading old ground. But obviously, the holidays were just times to sort of clean up that back catalog. So that's all I've really been up to. So what have you been playing?
Yeah, so I went to a very interesting game. I actually been playing Deathloop, or I played Deathloop.
Ooh, wow.
I finally picked it up. Obviously, a lot of the fanfare, the talk about it, and it finally went on sale. And I had been wanting to play that for a while. But I was like just not trying to crack out 60 just because I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. So I played it and I beat it already. I liked it a lot. I thought it was actually quite good. Now, before I get into my full thoughts, I will like to reinforce that though I did really like Deathloop, I do stand by a lot of the major kind of industry-wide critiques I had of it on the last episode about, and then the Game Awards related thing. I still think that the awards that it received were a bit overblown, specific in the genres that it got. I still do feel like in many ways this game was a bit of like an industry plant. But on top of that being said, I would say that it actually really is a really solid game. I loved the gameplay loop overall. I loved gathering intel to try to figure out how to break this loop. The gameplay was clean. Again, if you've played arcade games in general, you'll have an understanding generally of how this game feels. But I think they perfected a lot of the stuff that they kind of set up in Dishonored. And they gave it like a kind of a fresh coat of paint. The powers that they integrated, very clean. Some of them, again, evoke the same spirit of Dishonored, but I think have like a different kind of flair to it, a different kind of like precision. And it just has one of actually the best incentives for replayability that I've probably ever seen. And naturally, the game is structured in a way almost kind of like a Metroidvania, in a way that you're going to have to backtrack. Now, it's not a Metroidvania in terms of its general structure, but in the way that you're going to be going to a lot of the same locations multiple times. But each time's a little bit different because it's a different... the day-night cycle actually dramatically changes the nature of the map. So if you go to a specific, like let's say, you go to the city portion of the map during the day, if you go to the same city part at nighttime... And the day-night cycle goes by like chunks. Like you choose, okay, it's evening now, I'm going to go to this location. Oh, it's summer. It's not like it changes once you're there. But it changes dramatically, and things become more dangerous, and the hero, the antagonists that you meet are very interesting, and there's lots of different story stuff. And it even gives you a little bit of decision-making towards the end there. So I think there's a lot to like about this game. Again, I think it's a bit overblown in terms of some of the fanfare that it got in some of the end of the year awards. But again, like to be honest with you, if I had played this earlier, I think this would have cracked my top 5, honestly.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I think it's really, really solid, and I don't have any major negative critiques on it whatsoever. That's other than the fact that I think that the fanfare around it is overblown. But so yeah, I do think it's a little overrated. But other than that, I think it's better than a lot of games that came out this year, and I definitely think it's worth a play. I think it's on sale fairly recently for under $30. I would suggest anybody get this for under $30, no doubt. I think you'll get a kick out of it for sure. So. I beat Deathloop, and then I still kind of had the fix for that, so I went back to Dishonored.
There we go.
Yeah, I haven't touched that game in forever. And so I went back to that, and I'm on the last mission of that, so I'm almost done with Dishonored 1 as well. For you guys that don't know, Dishonored is It's not technically a trilogy. There's like 2 of them, but they have like this standalone DLC thing for it. Imagine kind of like a Lost Legacy just for like Dishonored.
Yeah.
And so I'm fully planning on going through the rest of them. But yeah, 1 still holds up really well. I think there are small quality of life improvements that don't exist in that game that since then Arcane has kind of worked out, like marking enemies so you can kind of see their relative location to you once they're moving. You can't do that in this game, but it does have one major benefit, I would say, even over Deathloop, which is the looking through the keyhole mechanism. I've always loved about Dishonored in general. So yeah, no, I think it still holds up really, really well. It's a lot shorter than I remember. You can actually blaze through it. I actually find it way more challenging than I remember as well, because if you guys don't know, generally in Dishonored, there is a chaos system. So basically what that is it's tied to the amount of fatal kills that you have. And I had basically not paid attention and completely forgot about that system. So the first maybe 3 or 4 missions, I had just slaughtered mass amounts of people. I played it the way I played Deathloop. And unlike Deathloop, there are major implications in Dishonored from doing that, as opposed to Deathloop, which it doesn't matter at all. You can kill everybody, you can stealth your whole way and kill nobody if you want. It's kind of your call. But with Dishonored, there's actually major implications in the late game based on the way you play. And I've gotten high chaos on every single mission, and I'm on the last mission now. I screwed up really bad, so I'm definitely getting the bad ending of Dishonored. So be it. I mean, it is what it is. If anything, I'll just watch the good ending online just so I know going into Dishonored 2 what happened. But yeah, no, I there's just some points where like there's like so many people that I'm like I don't have the stealth skills to be able to navigate this without killing somebody. And then, lo and behold, I kill one person, they find the body, now I gotta kill them. A maid walks in, she's dying too. And then next thing you know, I've just killed the entire mansion. I'm like, look at the shape of me. So, but yeah, Dishonored is still a lot of fun. It's on Game Pass, so for anybody who has kind of an interest, especially if you're coming off of Deathloop, you had a good time with Deathloop and you want to see kind of where a lot of that legacy comes from, definitely go into Dishonored. It holds up just as well you'd need it to. There's no major kind of gameplay issues that I've bumped into, other than the fact that there are some small things that they added since that are not in Dishonored. But again, the powers are there. The rune system's still very interesting. There's actually a very interesting story related to it. Unlike Deathloop, which I think has a solid story, but a lot of what Deathloop's charm is not so much the story, but the little tidbits of information that you garner along the way, almost like a Fallout game, if you will. It's not so much the overarching story so much as the small, tiny threads that you bump into along the way, and the characters that you meet that I think make it actually compelling. But Dishonored, on the other hand, I think there are solid characters, but a lot of it is the kind of world that you exist in and the kind of power struggle that's happening within it. So yeah, I'm big thumbs up on both of them. I'm having a good time and I'm going to continue. I'm probably going to be able to beat Dishonored today, and then I'll probably jump into Dishonored 2 later today or tomorrow or something like that. And yeah, that's everything I've been playing.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Again, I'm really such a big fan of our Arcane, and now that you've played Deathloop and actually were pretty positive, it's got me really wanting to like try, because our tastes are not similar, but we usually see things the same way. I have another friend who's super into it. He's been playing Deathloop since day one, and he was very high on it, and now he's lowered, not like hating on it. But I'm looking. I mean, my local GameStop is selling the game for $22.99.
Yeah, pick that up. I co-sign it for sure.
So, probably right after record. Yeah, all right. The deluxe edition is expensive, but yeah, $23.
Yeah, more than worth it. I co-sign it. I definitely say pick it up.
Brand new, so that's only one left in stock. All right, so I might I have to take care of that.
Get stepping on that,
yeah. So it's exciting to hear, and that is again, that's that game that's been haunting me since release. That it's like I have not played, and now I'm a little bit more interested in it and more comfortable in spending those $20.
Yeah, the only thing I would say annoyed me personally is the Juliana system, and not so much playing as Juliana, because I could not get that to work for the life of me. And I had somebody else play it with me, and she couldn't get it to work either. So yeah, I can't get the, like when you go into other people's loops and try to kill them.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't get that to work at all. I don't know if the player count is just low. I'm not sure, but I couldn't get that to work. But when Juliana's, I played on single player mode, so the Julianas that came into my loop, I think are all NPCs. They're not they're not actual other people. That can get annoying. to be honest with you, because sometimes you'll go into an area for a pretty complex run. There's a lot of things you need to do. There's a lot of people. And if it just suddenly is like Juliana is like on the hunt and she locks all your exits. And unlike a Metroid Dread, where like it's very scary, but it's very procedural, this one is very unpredictable. Sometimes I've straight up seen them kill themselves accidentally. There's times where they only stay on the roofs and snipe you, and so that they've almost killed me in one hit. And then there's other times that they kind of walk up to you, and if you perch behind a car, you can mow them down. So there's a lot of variability in terms of the function of the Juliana that I just wish it was a little bit more consistent. That's my only, like, I would say, significant critique I have, is the AI for Juliana is not great.
All right, so yeah, I gotta keep that in mind. I'll keep that in mind when I finally do my little death loop run.
Awesome.
So yeah, let's we can get right into the stories. Some random interesting ones, things that we didn't expect. But Sony's finally started talking about PSVR2. So Sony has unveiled its next generation VR system, officially named PlayStation VR2, and the VR controller, which is now the VR2 Sense controller. So the new features included visual fidelity. For a high-fidelity visual experience, PSVR2 offers 4K HDR, 110-degree field of view. With an OLED display, players can expect a display resolution of 2000 by 2040 per eye and a smooth frame rates of 90 to 120. The headset-based controller tracking with inside-out tracking, PSVR2 tracks you and your controller through integrated cameras embedded in the VR headset instead of doing that external camera that PSVR1 needs. New sensory features. Obviously, the DualSense technology is practically being put into these new VR2 Sense controllers. The headset feedback is also a new sensory feature that amplifies the sensations of a game from the player. It's created by a single motor in with vibrations that add an intelligent tactile element, bringing players closer to the gameplay experience. For example, gamers can feel a character's elevated pulse during tense moments, the rush of objects passing close to a character's head, or the thrust of a vehicle as the character speeds forward. Additionally, PS5's Tempest 3D audio tech makes sounds in the player's surroundings come alive, adding to this new level of immersion. The other big feature is the eye tracking. With eye tracking, PSVR2 detects the motion of your eyes, so a simple look in a specific direction can create an additional input for the game character. This allows players to interact more intuitively in new and lifelike ways, allowing for a heightened emotional response and enhanced expression that provide a new level of realism in gaming. Also, during CES, they announced a new exclusive VR game, which it's been murmuring that we knew this was in existence, but Horizon Call of the Mountain was announced and teased. We saw a small glimpse of it. We didn't see exactly how that all works in VR, but pretty much we have this huge PSVR just information dump. Now, I know you're very interested in the technology. I know physically you can't do too much with VR because you get motion sickness. So it's never been your wheelhouse, but you've tried it. You've tried my PlayStation VR here. Something that I've been wanting to rehook up, just so many wires, which PSVR2 seems to claim to fix with that USB on the front of the PS5 is mainly going to be designed for that PSVR2. This is mainly interesting in the aspect, not only is the technology there and it's super interesting, we talked a while ago about PSVR2 leaks, and this is almost word for word exactly what was leaked. The basic 4K display, the headset tracking, we knew the DualSense mechanics were going to be in the controls, but the eye tracking, the single wire connectivity, this is wild that much of it was leaked and true. This is a huge step for VR because some of the stuff this is doing is things that not only is Oculus not doing, but like the Valve Index isn't doing. So I can only imagine what the price is going to be. It's going to probably be more than the PS5. I don't see how they'll sell it for any cheaper. Obviously, it's more of a luxury item. But what did you think of all this information? Not just the information, but this leap into the next generation of VR.
Yeah, I was actually really, really impressed by it. I would say the main thing why I was impressed, and obviously a lot of this we had kind of heard about just due to the leaks, but now that we have it official, I think what's most impressive is the fact that it pretty much addresses every major critique that people had of the first VR headset.
Correct.
And so for them to get that on their second try is actually crazy to me. It's an insane jump up. And again, technology progresses really fast, but it's like it takes many companies, many iterations of a specific piece of hardware, especially something as complex as a VR headset, to be able to really get it to the place that it needs to be for the widespread adoption. And the jump that this made, it fixed the wiring issue, the fidelity issue is insane, and I will never, in good faith, be able to put doubt on their kind of vibration abilities after the DualSense controller. I have to have all the faith in the world that this is going to be insane. The fact that they were able to get rid of the camera, and now that they have these brand new controllers as well, so they got away with those old PlayStation Move controllers, which I still think is just insanity, the fact that they actually relied on that. And in part, it's kind of like marketing genius. You have all this underutilized hardware, might as well put it to good use. So I'm not hating on them in that regard. I'm just surprised that they kind of opted for that. And so I'm glad that they are kind of finally, dipping their toes into a brand new controller as well, which, with that DualSense technology is actually really exciting. And yeah, it's really tough because this is, you and I are both the same, where we're kind of like, we would like to try everything in gaming, whether it be on the PC side, the handheld side, all the different controllers. We're kind of platform agnostic, and we want to try everything because we kind of have a general love of gaming. And so it's really tough for me to have this entire genre, basically, of gaming that is only expanding with time, that I'm kind of unable to partake in, or at least that's the idea. I really want PSVR2, and I'm leaning on the side of getting it. But the thing is, as you kind of mentioned, I have a very, very, very high sensitivity to motion sickness, and I honestly don't know how that it would affect me in large amounts. I only put it on for a brief moment when we were playing, I think, Tekken or something like that at your house. And
weaker, yeah.
That was the extent. There wasn't really much movement in terms of the camera. It was kind of like a static image that you see kind of projected in front of you. And so I honestly don't know how VR would impact me. All I know is that some games that are not even first person, like Last of Us, made me really sick. Some games like Star Wars Squadrons make me sick. But then other games don't make me sick. So it's kind of hard to predict of how it's going to affect me. It has a lot to do with like motion blur and whether there is a fixed point on the screen, like a dot that I can look at, versus something kind of open. There's lots of things, and there's lots of accessibility features that I have to utilize to be able to play certain games, and so that's why I'm always thankful for these games that include it. So I need to actually do a little bit of research about what the accessibility options are for VR2, and if there are enough there present to kind of in good faith be able to try it. And if there's some way that I can basically try one out, I don't know how, but I'm going to try to figure out, because I would preferably like to try it out and make sure that it works before I drop, I don't know, $700 on this thing. But I would really love to get this piece of hardware because it fixes a lot of the stuff that kind of, even for me, kind of turned me off a little bit about it. And seeing them kind of coming out of the gate with a major first party release for it is a good sign that, shows they're very invested in it. And I just hope that trajectory continues. That's the one thing, is that first-party support has to continue. And I think a very kind of no-brainer way to do that is to use your existing established IP. Throw the Uncharted's in there. Throw the Ratchets on there. Throw the Horizons on there, the God of Wars. And then, you have your opportunities with the smaller developers or brand new IP on there. But I think that's a very smart idea for them to kind of come out of the gate with the Horizon game. So, yeah, I'm overall very positive about it, and I would love to get this. It's just, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, that's my big thing. I'll give Sony, they really supported the PlayStation VR a lot. I mean, it's still releasing games on it. They made that little adapter for free that you could hook it up to your PS5, which I have not done. Maybe tonight I'll finally do it. It's just so many wires to add another set of cables. It's just so much. But so I can only imagine that they're gonna keep this. They're going all in right now, so we don't have to make like 3-4 different VR versions, which is why going so strong makes sense. Again, I would like this. I wonder how hard it's gonna be to get these. I can only imagine what the price is gonna be. So it really all depends who, what, when, where it lands on when I can snag it. I would like to, again, I enjoy VR. PSVR has always been my favorite VR system due to the comfortable of the headset and stuff. I haven't tried some of these, obviously, like the $1,000 headsets and stuff. I have not tried, but out of all these other ones, obviously just being at home on PlayStation makes sense to me, which is why it's so enticing. but I also need to see some of this stuff actually work. What's that moment-to-moment horizon look like? I want to make sure it's not just an on-rails thing, because I've seen VR things get very, different and not afraid to get, experimental. Which is, it was always kind of disappointing that Resident Evil Village has no, well, as of yet, who knows, has no VR capability. But there is that, like, Resident Evil 4 is now in VR version, so that'd be really cool to bring over. Sony works really well with Capcom, so I'd be surprised unless there was a contract with Oculus for that stuff. So we'll have to see what those big hitters start coming out with as well.
Yeah, I do have one question for you. So, do you remember what the the original PSVR launched price-wise for? Because I didn't get it, so I'm not sure.
So I had bought the bundle that brought the headset, the camera, and 2 new wands. And that bundle was $400.
$400? Okay, so that's not bad. And I remember that being kind of an exciting prospect, is that you get to use it with existing hardware, and the price point is a lot cheaper, at least than what HTC was doing at the time.
I want to say it was like $3 something if you wanted just the headset. But I think, if I recall, there was only 2 bundles that released, which was, one was just the camera. The game was like PlayStation VR Worlds. They're basically their tech demo.
Yes. Yeah.
So I want to say it was the headset, the game, and the camera. And then I think there was the headset, the game, the camera, and the 2 wands. The only one I was able to snag was the one with the wands, because I had my PlayStation Move from PS3.
Yep.
But I had to just suck it up and get that one. I want to say, so it was at the time the same price as the PS4 Pro, but obviously more expensive than the new PS4 Slims that were out at the time. So that's what the ecosystem kind of looked like at the time.
Got it. And so, I mean, looking at the tech, it's almost guaranteed at this point that this is probably going to launch above 400. Judging, we're talking about 4K displays and a lot of improved hardware,
OLED.
And just the OLED screen, and naturally with time and inflation, things are going to go up in price. Do you have any sort of like inclination about what you think this could possibly launch for, since you understand the VR ecosystem a little better than I do?
So it's really interesting. I don't know, if they're cutting corners exactly where, since we have not seen the actual headset, so we don't know if straps are going to be cheaper or where they're working with this. Minimum in a hope for $550.
Okay,
that which would sense. Put it more than the digital PlayStation 5, but would put it kind of on par with the PS5, because at a certain point you can't start. Because PSVR needs a PS5 to play, you can't start getting into the territory where these things run by themselves. I know Oculus was able to do it, but Oculus, their Oculus Quest 2 it's all together. But again, there's a lot of cutbacks, battery life, screen display, and there's a lot of cutbacks that people don't like to talk about in the Oculus Rift.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see it in. If this all really hits exactly where they're hitting, which is expensive technology, adding rumble to the headset and stuff, it's things we have not seen. I could not imagine. I could easily see this at $600, which is huge, especially in a world that people are just still getting PS5s. And if you start getting this bundle, you're looking at $1,000 bundle for all this. But again, for those diehard gamers, it's a trade-off. It's an expensive hobby. It is a luxury hobby in a sense.
Yeah, it's conflicting, because I think one of the main reasons why you could say they pretty definitively priced the original PSVR so cheap is because when you are launching that new piece of hardware in that new kind of lane of technology, you need to have that buy-in be as low as possible to just get hardware in people's hands, get that buy-in, get that exposure as much as possible. And the understanding is eventually, once you kind of perfect that hardware and adoption's at a much higher rate, you can charge what actually kind of goes in line. So I didn't think they were operating on a loss, but they're certainly taking less than I'm sure they ideally would have liked to eventually. And so with this PSVR VR2, I think I pretty much am on par with you. I could definitely see the $600 thing happening. And I guess the question is, what was the adoption rate what it needed to be from the original, or are they still trying to sell it to people? And that's the question, is if they feel like, okay, PSVR 1 did enough people bought into the ecosystem, enough people have been exposed to it, so let's just kind of go and do our thing. Or do they still find the need, like, not enough people are really, like, that mainstream adoption is just still not there, so we still need to push hard to kind of get that price a little bit lower to get that buy-in, and then maybe with the third iteration they can go hard. So that's my question, is just like, and I don't know if we have all the figures on this, but what their estimates were, and did they meet their estimates? And because I know, VR game sales are not the highest in the world, but again, it's a very different ecosystem, and it already is kind of by definition a little bit on the luxury product side. Your average consumer is not buying a VR headset in general. The ones that do maybe mess around with the Oculus because it has all that internal computing, so they don't need additional devices and stuff like that. So yeah, that was just kind of my question to you, is just, how feasible is it that they significantly increase the price? But it seems like we're kind of on the same boat, that it's very likely that they will.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, and I know it's probably shifting now because Oculus has made their Quest 2 so cheap and without any other hardware needed.
Exactly.
But at one point, PlayStation VR was the number one sold headset, because it was one, it was the cheapest. Two, you didn't need a $1,000 plus PC to make it run. I'm looking at numbers. I don't know how accurate this time this was updated, but as of January 2020, last year, they were above 5 million units sold.
So that sounds like that's the adoption levels that you would probably want for a new piece of hardware, I guess. That's just my guess, but
I'm looking at it released in February of 2017, according to this, and basically every year it sold roughly, a million units every year. So we'll see how much that works out. Again, though we're going through a weird pandemic and money tight and all that nonsense, the PS5 is still selling like crazy. Series X is selling like crazy. The Switch OLED sold really well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, definitely. And then so that sounds like they've done the work to get the exposure on PlayStation VR that they need to do to comfortably, I would say, have that upcharge on the PSVR2, because the people who know at this point, and then the people who are interested, and I think enough time has elapsed and enough technology has increased for them to reasonably sell people on purchasing a new piece of hardware. I guess that's always the question, is this one different enough to motivate someone to be like, okay, I have a VR, but I want this new one? And it's kind of like the Switch versus the Switch OLED type situation. Like, is there enough changes to motivate people? And I could pretty comfortably say, as somebody who's not a VR adopter but kind of just watching externally, that the VR2 sounds like a big enough upgrade to justify the cost.
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. So I guess we can move on to the second story, and this is another one that was kind of floating around. It's a little bit of a two-parter because there's the main story and then kind of a follow-up on that. So the main story is that the ESA is shifting the Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3, to an online-only event out of concerns around the pandemic. This is actually not really surprising by anybody who's been paying attention to what's been going around. Part of their statement includes, due to the ongoing health risks surrounding COVID-19 and its potential impact on the safety of exhibitors and attendees, E3 will not be held in person in 2022. The ESA said in a statement to GamesBeat, "We remain incredibly excited about the future of E3 and look forward to announcing more details soon." So obviously that's not surprising at all. Actually seeing a super in-person crowded expo this summer, I thought was already bold to begin with. I seriously doubted that was going to happen to begin with. So them switching to kind of a digital-only expo makes all the sense in the world. But really quick, I'm going to do a quick follow-up that was kind of also floating around that line. So it's also worth mentioning that according to games business analyst Mike Futter, and this was kind of super trending on Twitter, is that there was reports that E3 was actually switched to a digital based on COVID-related issues is actually just spin, and that they heard from sources in mid-November, before Omicron's emergence, that at the end of the month that ESA had abandoned their dates for LACC. So apparently they're suggesting that they're using the COVID thing as kind of a justification for a decision that they actually made way before this. Now, I would push back a little bit because, yes, Omicron is a newer emergence. People did know about it in November, but it wasn't, I guess, spreading too far in the States at that time. However, COVID at large was aware, and they could see broader trends about that happening in November. I wouldn't necessarily chalk it up to spin immediately, but they are suggesting basically that there are other reasons they abandoned their date for LACC. Maybe vendor issues, maybe participation and people buying tickets issues, maybe issues with the city and licensing. There's lots of things you could possibly guess, but this is a very interesting story. I think the main thing that we can actually discuss, that's actually set in stone, is the fact that this is moving to a digital format. And so that gives us kind of the opportunity of, and we've talked about this before, but it's been quite a while. So E3 in 2022 is a very interesting entity, if you will, because now in the digital kind of marketplace, all competing for attention, this is not the number one kind of game show anymore in person, because once you're put into the digital ecosystem, you're kind of on equal territory with a lot of other people. Yes, you have that name recognition, but at this point, in terms of the ability to show off games, the Game Awards and even Summer Game Fest is just as equal competition at this point than what E3 can do. And now, PlayStation's got their state of play. They're super comfortable. Xbox has been in that world for a long time, and Nintendo kind of perfected it. And again, everybody's throwing their foot in the race. Sega's got its own thing. Capcom's got its own. Like, everybody's got their own thing. And so what is E3 in 2022? So my question to you is, what are your thoughts about it moving to a digital format? What are your thoughts about E3 2022 in general? And what are your thoughts about the rumors in general that this is actually spin and it's actually related to something else?
Yeah, the whole spin thing again is a mix up because they obviously, there was a lot of information that they weren't solidifying their dates for E3. This is a lot of stuff. There's so much planning and vendors, like you said, sponsorships, and people need to go there and build sets, and a lot of this stuff happens very early on. Again, though, yes, Omicron was not a widespread. I mean, it was spreading, but it's been known for a while. But we did have Delta at the time. You know, we have so many different versions of COVID. They may have been planning since then, like, they'd rather not have it a huge live event and no one go because of what these last couple years have looked like. So it makes sense that even if they abandoned it sooner than they announced it. So that doesn't make it's a mixed bag. I could see that. I don't think E3 needed to blame it on COVID. It's just so it's a mix. I understand that. I don't really believe it was a spin move. On that, but. Thinking of what E3 looks like in general, I mean, I'll be honest, we're sort of in the know. We read a lot. I didn't know E3 2022 was a live event. I thought it was going to be a digital event from the get-go.
Yeah, me too.
So I had no idea that it was supposed to be an in-person event. So the way, and I know that it's like half and half. Like sometimes they have a small studio set up. I know like Jeff Keighley does that with his Summer Game Fest. And I know the Game Awards was more of an in-person show, but like a Summer Games Fest, it's different people from their different offices around the world, and I know they have some people come to one place, but I guess mainly they want to discuss like the everyday guy, us being able to go into this stuff. And though you and I have different reasons why we would not want to go to these events right now, there are people who don't care and do want to be the first one to see whatever Assassin's Creed, whatever that platform is going to be, Infinite or Infinity, and I get that. I do understand it. I think it is a shift in the times. I think even if you do E3 for a couple years only digital, it is smarter because then you have the fan base and your main supporters, which is us, buying the games. We're all on the same thing, we're on the same platform. Just because we weren't able to scalp a badge doesn't mean now just because someone else was able to, they get to see something prior to. And I understand the industry, having the IGN first and all that stuff makes sense. But you have to realize that, everyone's going to be, even if this wasn't a concern and they did E3 2022, you probably would have seen a very, very weak show out, just because most people do understand that a crowded convention center with people all around the world, studios all around the United States, this doesn't make sense. Which is why I think it's more interesting for them to maybe get ready to adopt a permanent digital event. And like you said, it's also time for them to evolve to a different format, because that's the issue. The issue with E3 was it used to be a nice solid week of announcements, and we knew who was going when, and that was all great. With PlayStation pretty much ducking out the last couple of years, they're doing their state of plays. Xbox will announce their random streams. Nintendo does their directs. Ubisoft does their own thing now, and the issue, do I miss having all that stuff into 1 week? Yeah, I do. I don't like have to, because on a random Thursday at 9 a.m. I have to try to catch all these announcements or be late to the party. In a sense, I do miss having that all scheduled out. And it also leads to a mixed bag. E3 2021 was not that great. I remember there was many days. I think the Capcom E3 was terrible showing.
Yeah,
it was
most of the showings sucked.
Most of the showings were sucky because and then they appear at other events. They show up at Game Awards. They show up at Games Fest or Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show. So I think those shows need to they all got to kind of work together. So we have a big show maybe in the winter, a big show. If in the year we had 4 big game shows, 1 per season, would make more sense. Not the random Ubisoft one where they show, something to have Tom Clancy roll in his grave again. It's all these things that lead up to it. So I don't see where in-person held E3 makes sense anymore, but I do need to see E3 change a lot. And I understand that ESA has a lot of concerns and obviously all the investing and the money and the corporate itself, but I think it's time for them to coincide with some of these events. Have things be considered E3 when they're not E3. There's a lot of work to be done. Because that mentality that just one day COVID's gonna be gone, or there's not gonna be no sickness to be spread, is a wild dream.
Yeah, most definitely. In many ways, the way I kind of feel about E3 is. And you can kind of separate the thing. So first off, you got the ESA, which there's lots of stuff you could read about them that they're mismanaging this overwhelmingly, and they're kind of their own mess. And so that, I think, is weighing against E3's longevity in general, is its attachment. The fact that the ESA has anything to do with them, I think, is going to cause them issues going forward in general. Also, the fact that it is an old format. Industries change, and E3 existed and dominated in a time where the industry and the kind of games news flow was just very different at that time. You know what I mean? Where everybody kind of centralized at the single event. Where at this point now, things are just not structured the same, and news doesn't. This whole idea of holding all these announcements to this one event to dump it on everybody is just not structured like that anymore. A lot of these publishers want to hold their own cards and get their own dedicated time, and release things at their own pace, thus the Nintendo Direct format. And so at this point, and many times, E3 is kind of playing ball with these publishers as opposed to the publishers playing ball with E3. Once upon a time, E3 was like, okay, we're doing this in July, and then PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, Sega, you name it, we're like, all right, cool, we're going to be there. We're going to have A, B, C, D, E, F, G for you. And then they get the stage time when E3 tells you going to be on stage. Where now, at this point, PlayStation's like, hey, we're doing a State of Play, or Nintendo's like, hey, we're doing a Nintendo Playhouse, we're going to do it at this time. And they're like, hey, can you do it at our show? And it's like, all right, yeah, whatever, we'll put your little branding on it, and then we'll call it an E3 thing. But otherwise, they were going to do it anyways, because again, the cards are in the publisher's hands now. The power has shifted. And so kind of E3 as this culture juggernaut, it's just done. Now, I'm not one of these people that are like, okay, is this the last E3? Well, not necessarily. I think E3 will exist for possibly a long time to come, because I think E3 as a customer-facing show and E3 what it means for the game industry are two very different things. E3 is a tremendous networking opportunity for a lot of publishers, a lot of developers, and I think it can continue to be that going forward. But this idea of this kind of customer-facing show where people kind of go in large amounts to see the latest and greatest game things and try out these new games, is just, things are not structured in that same way. I think obviously there are the implications of COVID in general that kind of hampers that, but I think even post-COVID, even if you even want to call that, because whether people want to admit it or not, this pandemic is going to fundamentally change the way a certain contingent of society looks at events like this in general, to be honest with you, and even those who are willing to go back in person. It's never going to have the same impact, not because E3 lost its flair, but because the game industry just changed the way it was structured and the power center shifted, and that's going to happen. And a lot of people are like, oh, is the power going to shift to the Game Awards or Tokyo Game Show or DICE or whatever? And it's very clear that no one award show is going to hold the power of announcements or previews or anything like that. It's going to exist in the hands of the people who create or publish those very games themselves. And so that's a very interesting thing. And it's kind of power is consolidated basically into those major big three, maybe big four if you want to call it. And the indie developers are not running to E3 to find a slot on somebody's stage. No, they're running to the publishers now. Like, hey, Sony, can you do a little indie game showcase? Can I be included in that? Or Microsoft, ID at Xbox, or the Nintendo Indie Treehouse, or whatever they call it, Indie Direct. That's who they're running to now. So I think that's the fundamental miscalculation a lot of people make, is they think the power shifted away from E3 into possibly IGN with the Summer Game Fest or whatever, them grabbing it, which couldn't be farther from the truth in my opinion. I think they're certainly emulating an old format, and because of E3's vulnerable state, I think they've been able to cash in on like that. But I think on a macro level, I think it's honestly the game publishers themselves that hold all the cards, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I feel about it.
No, it absolutely does. You know, we live in a world where they don't need this avenue anymore to go directly to us. They can tweet a trailer right now. Naughty Dog could tweet Last of Us 3 trailer right now, and it will explode in views. You know, they don't need a stage to do it. And, you know, it's nice to have that stage and have everyone at the moment, but the way the internet works now just spreads like wildfire.
Exactly. I mean, theoretically, PlayStation could be like, okay, God of War Ragnarok, it's coming. Put up the pre-order, click the pre-order, there's the trailer right there. It's all in their ecosystem. They don't even need YouTube, to be honest with you. Now, obviously, they utilize YouTube, and I think that's very important to go on YouTube, go on Twitter, go on Facebook, of course. But from the end user perspective, you don't even need to leave your console anymore. Like, to be honest, you go into that store. That's where I watch a lot of my trailers, Forspoken, and if there's a game that I'm kind of like, okay, what is this all about? I haven't really seen the trailer yet. Go into the store. Pre-order it. You can watch the trailer, and if I'm sold on the trailer, I can pre-order it in a click. Move the cursor down one, click it, and it's pre-ordered. So yeah, just technology's advanced dramatically, and it's just kind of funny talking about like these in-person shows. You know, whether it be kind of Ubisoft or EA on stage, and it's like it just feels very 2010, 2012. And I think there's certainly a place for that, but it's kind of silly to think that they in any way kind of hold the cultural zeitgeist anymore. Unfortunately for them, because again, I love E3. I come from that generation. You and I we're on the older side of the millennials, so we grew up with this. I loved when E3 was popping, and I would love nothing more for that to be the case again. But it just doesn't really make any sense right now with the way the news flow works. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, again, we'll have to see how it unrolls, and maybe we have a really good E3 this year.
Yeah, maybe
they have a lot. You know, so we'll have to keep an eye out, and we'll see what else. They'll pretty much probably go dark until right before the event, on who, what, when, where, why. So we'll have to see. All right, going on to the next story, a little one that I was super excited when I saw this trending, and then immediately got disappointed because there's nothing much. But so according to an industry analyst, Mario Kart 9 is currently in active development. We'll have a new racing twist and could be teased this year. The speculation surrounding the game comes from Tokyo-based industry analyst Dr. Serkan Toto, who, when writing his predictions for the upcoming year of GameIndustry.biz, said that the new entry in the beloved racing series is on its way. Quote, I am aware Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is selling very well on Nintendo Switch, but Mario Kart 9 is in active development, unquote. He said before saying that Nintendo could tease their next entry for the franchise this year. What's more, Toto also stated that Mario Kart 9 may launch with a new twist. So, though, yes, he's been, accurate, and I know he's an, industry analyst, and so guessing games and hearing, what he hears through the grapevines is, like, part of his job. I think it's more than obvious that Mario Kart 9 is in development. It probably has been for quite a while. You have to realize, though Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on Switch still sells a lot, it's because it's the only Mario Kart game on there.
Yeah.
So there's not much option. Mario Kart 8 technically is a 2014 game.
Yeah, it's Wii U.
That's Wii U. The port didn't really added a few features. So really, this is a 7-year-old game at this point. So it's I think it's the biggest gap between Mario Kart. So I would be surprised if Mario Kart 9 is maybe not even more ahead than we think. I also believe if it's just starting because Nintendo is the person. They are the company that if this thing is selling like crazy, why even make another one? That is what they do. That is something they do for certain franchises. They're a mixed bag. So I love Mario Kart. I know you love Mario Kart. We used to spend hours playing all the different Mario Kart, especially Mario Kart 07 or Mario Kart DS. We spent many hours playing these games. So I've been craving and dying for Mario Kart 9. Though, there's other kart racers who've helped me get along. Obviously, Crash Team Racing Remake was fantastic and has really set the bar up high for now what I hope a Mario Kart 9 is going to be. There is something charming and specific about Mario Kart style items, track record, music that just really work well. So that is something I'm really interested in seeing. Every Mario Kart usually has some sort of twist nowadays. Not necessarily big and game changing. So I'm obviously Mario Kart 8's big thing was the anti-gravity, going up in sides and upside down, backwards, and all that stuff. So I'm curious what this new twist could be. Maybe I've seen many people sort of speculating it's going to be more of a heavier attack system. I don't really understand what that really works and how that means, because there's only so many twists you can do. You already have your kart going from air, water, road. Now you have anti-gravity. I don't know what it could be. So I'm interested. How are you reacting to this? What's your hopes for it?
Well, yeah, obviously, I'm happy about it in the way that I don't need to be sold on a Mario Kart 9. Of course, you and I, we're massive Mario Kart fans, so I'm in whatever they do. But to be honest with you, first off, it's not that I don't believe it, but it's one of those things. I do super grain of salt when it comes to anything Nintendo, just because, again, there's just a lot of miscalculations, a lot of misinformation out there. And again, I trust this guy. He's to be trusted. I'm not calling him like illegitimate source or anything like that. But at the same time, Nintendo is not Ubisoft. They're not known for tremendous leaks or anything like that. And so a lot of what happens with Nintendo rumors in quotes is it's a lot of trend analysis. It's not like, somebody saw somebody's screen on the train and it's Ubisoft. That like what happens with Ubisoft. What happens with Nintendo is a lot of like, well, if you look at their timelines and you look at how long it's been with this, and I heard about this, and they're hiring for this, then it makes sense for this. And so it's a lot of trend analysis, and that has its limitations, as evidenced by the Switch Pro situation. Plenty of people have come out with rumors about not only there being a Switch Pro, but having it come out in 2021. And then we got the OLED instead. And then there was people who would follow up and it's like, well, yeah, there's the OLED, but no, the Pro's coming and it's different and it's going to come in Q1 of 2022, right after the OLED. Like, that's what I mean. There's a lot of kind of conjecture and things pivot, and Nintendo pivots sometimes, and they look a lot about the demands of the marketplace, the demands of their customers. And one thing they don't do is they don't step on their own games. That's one thing. So it's about time that we get a Mario Kart 9, but many things about this story is kind of a duh type of situation where it's like Mario Kart 9 is an active development. Well, yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, Mario Kart 8 was a Wii game, and even the deluxe version came out in 2017, 2018, something like that. It was years ago, and they haven't really released any DLC related to that, again, since around 2018-ish. So it's been years of inactivity on Nintendo's part due to Mario Kart. So, of course, Mario Kart 9 is an active development. And, of course, there's going to be a spin. I mean, there always is. Or not always, because I guess you could say Deluxe is a pretty standard experience. And what is the new twist? I don't know. They've actually introduced a lot of different modes that, if you want to be like, Battle Royale, well, they've kind of done that already. They've introduced a lot of different modes and balloon hunt and all different types of stuff that are actually really fun. I'm not 100% sure what that new twist could be, short of maybe breaking out of the cart system and maybe making something a little bit more open as an option, perhaps. Who knows? They're hard to predict, but ultimately I have a lot of faith in their ability to deliver a quality thing. But yeah, for me, it was like a story that I was like really excited about, but at the same time I was kind of like, yeah, no duh though. It's kind of like we didn't really get anything that new here. In the way that this is as interesting as hearing the rumors that like GTA 6 is in development. It's like, well, yeah, I'm sure it is. When it manifests what it looks like, that's a more interesting conversation. But the fact that a sequel in some degree exists and is being developed is kind of a no-brainer. I'd be really surprised if there was actually a rumor that came out and it's like, no, there is no Mario Kart being touched whatsoever, and they have no intention of making another one. That would actually really interest me.
That'd be the bigger story.
Yeah,
that
would blow my mind.
Episode.
Yeah,
yep.
But it's like one of those. It's about as interesting as like Odyssey. Like there's a whole rumors like, oh, the Odyssey sequel is in development. Well, yeah, of course it is. Like, yeah, these are major IPs. Like this is not like something that's been latent for a long. It's not like you want to talk something interesting. It's like, oh, Nintendo's making a new custom Robo game. Now we're talking. Now that's interesting. But
yep.
But Mario Kart. I mean, kind of course. But yeah, whatever they released, I'm really down for it. We'll see what timeline it is. But again, they're not hurting for quality IP, and they have a quality stable of games. But they're 2022 right now. We have Arceus, Triangle Strategy, and I think that's it for now. Breath of the Wild 2, we don't know. So they don't have any major games. And they kind of keep things close to the chest. So God knows what their 2022 looks like. I can't put it past them for this to be a thing.
Splatoon 3, I think, is technically
yes. You're right. And Bayonetta 3 as well.
Which is very quick compared to, I feel like we just played Splatoon 2.
Yeah.
Which, again, in the time...
That was 2017, I think?
Splatoon 2, I believe so.
Yeah.
In the time since Mario Kart 8's come out, we're going to get 3 Splatoon games.
Yeah, that's true.
Wild.
Yeah, because the IP started after that one came out.
Yeah, Splatoon definitely came out after Mario Kart 8 on Wii U. So we're going to get a trilogy of Splatoon games before we get another Mario Kart game. That's nuts to me.
Yeah. And I would say it's about that time. But again, as you kind of mentioned, it's already kind of past the normal amount of time they elapse. So they're taking their time with this. And they're letting Mario Kart 8 Deluxe cook. Which I can't hate on, and I think it's cooked long enough. So, if they teased this for 2022, I would not be surprised. If this released in 2022, I would actually be a little bit surprised. But then again, they turn things around quick sometimes.
Yes.
Like if we didn't know, I think we found out about Odyssey the same year it came out. I'm pretty sure. So.
Yeah, it was in the whole of I think that was in the original like Switch reveal.
Exactly.
And then it came out that year.
So things can happen. I mean, we found out about Paper Mario months before it came out, and that yes, that's a smaller scale thing. But Nintendo knows how to hold on to things and
Metroid
drop them. Yeah, Metroid was a super fast turnaround, so they know how to show things off and then and drop them when they need to be dropped in terms of kind of the slate of games they have. As you mentioned, they have Splatoon 3, and then they also have Bayonetta 3 somewhere in there. And again, that's a very different type of IP. It's something they acquired, but it's still theirs, and that's going to be coming, I'm assuming, sometime this year. But again, that. I actually assumed that was going to come somewhere in 2018 because they showed off in like 2017. So it's been forever since that game's been shown off. So who knows when that's coming? But it's really interesting stuff. I'm feeling good about it. So I guess we can kind of cap off the show with probably the biggest story, and it's something that I had wanted to do last episode, but we kind of cut for time. And so finally, we're going to go into 2021 in review. And basically, now that it's 2022, we can kind of look back on 2021 and kind of assess how was this year in gaming. And so basically the way I want to do this is I want to do it very comprehensively. And so basically I want to go through all the different pieces of hardware that came out this year. Then we can go all the major games that came out this year, and there's quite a bit, so I'm going to be reading for a while, but it'll give us basically a better starting point to kind of jog our memory of all the major games that came out this year. And then all said and done, we can kind of give our take about how we think this year was overall. Good, bad, meh, whatever. And if you want, we can maybe say who we thought killed it the most this year. What publisher, and some years obviously are way more clear than others, obviously 2017 Nintendo type things, 2018 Sony. But this is, maybe we can kind of go through all things and say like, hey, we think this publisher or this publisher kind of edged out everybody else this year. But I'm going to start with the hardware. So we had 5 new pieces of hardware that came out this year. And some of you are going to be like, well, does that count? Well, yeah, it's new pieces of hardware offerings from different places in the game industry. So we actually got the Atari VCS this year, which is actually really interesting after all the kind of debacles around that. We got the Switch OLED from Nintendo. We got the Evercade system, which is really, really dope in the retro game community. I highly suggest you guys check that out. We got the Analog Pocket, which is probably the most in-demand piece of hardware. And then we have the Zelda Game & Watch. that came out as well. So, and I'm looking really quick. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to confirm. I was like, wait, did the Playdate came out? No, it didn't. That's 2022. Okay, I'm just making sure. And then the Zelda Game & Watch, of course, also from Nintendo. So, in terms of these pieces of hardware, for us, I think we probably played the most of the Switch OLED. Of these, I have 3 of them, I think. No, I only have 2 of them. I'm wilding. Unfortunately, I don't have the Analog Pocket. That's kind of like Analog's offering for the Game Boy. It's like a high-end Game Boy experience. The Evercade,
so nice.
Yeah, the Evercade is basically a portable arcade system. You can have massive collections of arcade games, and Atari's done a great job with it. Lots of people have kind of lent their collections to the Evercade system, so it's really, really dope. And then the Atari VCS is obviously Atari's offering into modern hardware-ish. It has a little bit of a PC integration there. It's kind of a strange system. But yeah, so what are your thoughts about the hardware this year?
Yeah, it was an interesting year for hardware, especially when so much of it's relying on sort of the retro aspect in the past games, which is stuff we're super into, which is why, especially the Evercade, which I do have one pre-ordered on Amazon. I think it ships in February or something like that.
Oh, awesome.
For me, whether I hold on to it or not, we'll see. But same with an analog Pocket was an amazing thing. Again, I
tried to get a pre-order. I tried.
Yeah, I tried getting a pre-order, and you can still pre-order, but like the dates are way out, so I'm gonna just kind of wait on that. But it was such an interesting because it was more celebration of those past things. Obviously, the Zelda Game & Watch, mine's still boxed away. Super really cool little collector's item, and so it was an interesting one. Obviously, the Switch OLED is probably the biggest one for the mainstream. My Switch OLED disappeared in the mail. I never appeared, and I just sort of been holding off now getting it because of the constant rampant rumors of a Switch Pro.
We never followed up on that. You never got it, did you?
No, mine never appeared. I got my credit back. My local GameStop has like 10 of them in stock. So realistically, yeah, if I wanted to go get a Switch OLED, I would. It's a little workaround because I'd have to lose all my data and all that nonsense going on. Unless I keep my old Switch, but I don't see a point in keeping so many versions of a Switch. So it's an interesting thing, but it is such a half step where all this other stuff though, like the Analog Pocket and the Evercade, are really the ones that have really shown out. The Atari VCS, I know we've been hard on it. I know we like to come at it, but I just don't. We ran up with the Evercade and the Analog Pocket, something that I've really dove in information wise, and if I could, I would have them here right now because what it offers. I mean, I've seen some of these games. I've seen people play Link's Awakening DX on that Analog Pocket.
It's beautiful.
Man, is it great? So it is stuff that we want to get into. But I think overall, though, it's a year that we didn't expect much hardware. There's still some of these smaller things, and I like that these smaller companies were able to really come out with really well done products. We knew the Zelda Game & Watch. We kind of knew what we were getting with that, so there was a less of a big like excitement thing. But I think overall it was really an interesting year, especially to see different technologies.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, it's not 2021 or 2020, of course, with the PS5 and the Xbox. Obviously, that was kind of a different beast, the major kind of hardware launches. But overall, I wasn't really expecting much of anything this year. So to get I personally love the OLED, so I'm glad. But again, that's kind of like it's an upgrade. It's a luxury upgrade to the Switch. It's not really kind of like its successor or anything like that. The VCS, no one cares about. But yeah, it was a great year for retro gaming. The Evercade and Analog Pocket are some of the best, handheld devices to come out in years. And Analog in general are doing some of the best thing. Like they're just so amazing in game preservation and being able to experience retro games in their kind of highest fidelity. So that's awesome. And yeah, the Game & Watch, I'm glad I bought it. I enjoy it. I still play it every once in a while because that's how I'm playing Link's Awakening for like the 50,000th time. But yeah, no, it was a solid year for hardware. I wouldn't say it was like great, but your mileage may vary depending on what type of gamer you are. For example, like if you're a massive arcade head and Game Boy head, and you're able to actually get the Analog Pocket, then I'm sure this would have been a great year for you. If I had an Analog Pocket, I'd be jumping over the moon. But for people who are more into the major console releases, I think actually 2022 holds some big things with the Steam Deck coming. That's gonna be big, I think, personally. And so that, I think, people are going to hold off for a little bit, possibly a Switch Pro or whatever. I think 2022 holds a lot of potential for that crowd, but for this crowd, I think 2021 was definitely for the retro gamers and definitely for the Switch heads. But so that's the hardware. So now I'm going to do a long list of games that came out this year. Mm-hmm. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of run through them, and then we can kind of break it down by company and stuff like that. So for the third-party releases for games, we got Hitman 3, Persona 5 Strikers, The Medium, Balan Wonderworld, It Takes Two, Oddworld Soulstorm, Resident Evil Village, Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which I'm pissed that I didn't include in my Games of the Year. I completely forgot about it. Knockout City, Biomutant, Chivalry 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, Scarlet Nexus, Neo The World Ends With You, Kena Bridge of Spirits, The Ascent, Axiom Verge 2, that's on PC. Didn't even know that was out. I hate myself for that. 12 Minutes, Sonic Colors Ultimate, Life is Strange True Colors, Deathloop, Castlevania Advance Collection. I put that there because I'm biased. Lost Judgment, Far Cry 6, Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, The Hinokami Chronicles, The Dark Pictures Anthology House of Ashes, stinker, Riders Republic, Call of Duty Vanguard, GTA The Trilogy, The Definitive Edition, stinker, Shin Megami Tensei 5, Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth. Super biased for me putting it there, but that game is fire. Back for Blood, Battlefield 2042, Outriders, and Tales of Arise. I tried my best to capture all the third-party games that I could remember. So I put that there. Then let's go really quickly through Nintendo's major offerings this year. We got Metroid Dread, Zelda Skyward Sword HD, Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, that's the port. Bravely Default 2, they published it, they didn't develop it. Monster Hunter Rise, new Pokemon Snap, Miitopia, Mario Golf Super Rush, Monster Hunter Stories 2, Wings of Ruin, No More Heroes 3, WarioWare Get It Together, Mario Party Superstars, and Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. For Xbox, it was a little bit more of a chill year. We got Forza Horizon 5, Microsoft Flight Simulator, again, not a new game, but new to the console space, Halo Infinite, and Psychonauts 2. And then PlayStation had Ratchet & Clank, Ghost of Tsushima, the PS5 port, Death Stranding, the Director's Cut, and Returnal. So, a lot of games there. Overall, before we get into specific companies, what did you think about 2021 in terms of games? Did you think it was good, bad? What you think?
I think all things considering, we unfortunately have to take in what 2020 was and the switch to working mostly remote and what COVID did to development. We kind of suspected, and many people knew, that 2021 was going to be the real outcome of it, where we were going to see things, missing deadlines, missing dates, getting pushed into next year. I mean, Sony, they keep lying through their teeth saying that God of War was going to be this year. Horizon, I do think was supposed to be this year. Yeah. That one I do believe. There's no way God of War was going to come out this year, so we were seeing that. Considering that, where at the beginning of the year I was like, I don't know what I'm going to play past Hitman 3. And like Resident Evil Village, I think, was really the only two things that we knew
at the time
were coming at the time, and we're certain. I'm sure there's a few other, obviously Persona 5 Strikers.
Halo somewhere was supposed to. We didn't know when.
We had no idea what was going on with Halo. So besides like those few little sprinkles, like of those main ones we were gonna know. Overall, I think it was a really strong year. It let me take time to experiment with certain games. Scarlet Nexus was the game I was super excited for. Then I got very lukewarm on, and it overstayed its welcome. But initially it was really exciting. But little things like The Ascent, Kena Bridge of Spirits. I got time to try out like Lost Judgment and all these little things that made me happy. And then overall, like the biggest thing about playing these games where obviously that's where a lot of the stuff, and that's something Nintendo really knocks out the park. I spent a lot of time playing Super Mario 3D World and Skyward Sword. Completely forgot Pokemon Snap was this year. I didn't play that, but it was able to. We spent time, so it was a really comforting year. Is how I kind of wrapped it up. Did it have these blockbusters? No, that's obviously this year. 2022 is looking like more of that big blockbuster year. Really, besides like Halo, I think was really the only like big game this year. In my opinion, well, I think like Halo and like Metroid Dread were were up there, where everything else sort of was either lukewarm or wasn't supposed to like break the internet in a sense. That's how I reflected this year.
Yeah, for me, I'm very positive about this year. My initial instinct was kind of like, oh, it was kind of a meh year. You know, they had some great games, they had some meh games, but actually reading through it, that's actually not really the case. There's actually tons of games that I absolutely adored this year, and were very much a me kind of year. Hitman 3 obviously was incredible. We had the Mass Effect collection came back. We got Final Fantasy VII DLC that included stuff from other Final Fantasy VII titles. Like, that was insane to be able to see that actually come back. Kena Bridge of Spirits was phenomenal. We got a new Far Cry. GTA was obviously a dark point in things, but then you know, there's great things like Metroid Dread came back, or Metroid's back. Zelda Skyward Sword, they actually released a version that could actually be played now. Forza came back, Halo came back, Ratchet came back, Ghost of Tsushima came back with amazing DLC. So I can't even speak bad on this year because some really incredible stuff came out this year. And yeah, I can't even, the thing is, like, my instinct was like, well, there's no major juggernauts, but at the end of the day, I mean, Halo released a functional like a really, really quality title. And are there issues with it? Of course there is. But in 2021, the fact that they released a brand new Halo game that actually kind of did what it needed to do, that to me is enough to say, like, hey, 2021 gave us something, you know what I mean? And Forza was incredible, obviously, as well. And the third-party people, they held their own. Square did what they had to do this year. I'm really happy with them overall. And, I'm actually really impressed by Nintendo this year, to be honest with you. And there was a ton of games that, the way I try to remember is, like, not that was a publisher good this year, but not that if they were good for me this year, but were they good kind of objectively. And Nintendo, I think, objectively was really good this year. There's tons of stuff that they put out and a ton of exclusives that they had that I had no interest in whatsoever. But they also had a lot of things to offer that if you're in the Nintendo ecosystem and interest, they kept you busy all year. And I think that is something worth commending, personally. So I kind of jumped ahead a little bit on there. But for 2021, do you think there's kind of a runaway success from a specific publisher, or do you think it was kind of well-rounded this year?
Yeah, I would have to say, like, if you were someone who only owned a Switch and you were able to hit, like, if every one of these games hit something for you, then you had a really good year.
Oh, yeah.
You had a new Metroid, you had essentially a Zelda that most people skipped because it was unplayable. Not a rehash, but a port of one of the better 3D Mario games, especially after sort of the debacle which was the 3D All-Stars game, which didn't feel and play the way it should have. With a new little bonus thing, Bowser's Fury, which I'll be honest, I still have not played. I think I did play it, and I really like the mechanic, but I haven't gotten too far to go back to it. Monster Hunter Rise is really good, and Pokemon Snap was done for the fans, though it didn't speak to me for the price it was, but I did, Mario Golf. I played hours of Mario Golf that weekend that it came out. So I think overall I'd have to give it to Nintendo because, though they had a few ports, they did have new things. We got a No More Heroes 3. I love that series. I haven't gotten to play the third one yet. WarioWare coming back. Even Mario Party Superstars, which I know was it's in this gray water where it's like, yeah, it's technically a new game, but it's also rehashed mini games. But and same with Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. So I think overall, you'd have to. It's a rough one, but overall, if that's what you had was a Switch, that got you through this year because not only these really good games, some of them are pretty lengthy games, and something you could really dive your time into and lose yourself in. Where the games that PlayStation did release. Two of them were essentially ports. Ratchet and Clank I loved. I knocked it out. I platinumed that game. I got all the trophies. But it just was Ratchet and Clank. It was almost more what I was expecting. So, where you have things like Metroid Dread and being able to experience Zelda Skyward Sword for the true time, it just made me really like Skyward Sword. I used to hate that game constantly. And now it's one of my favorites. So it's not all the way up there, but it's very high up there for me now. So I'd have to give Nintendo that shout out. This is very old hardware that they're working with in the tech world technically, and for them to still be able to knock out these experiences for the most part really well is not something to forget.
Yeah, for sure. And overall, I would say if I have to choose between the three, yeah, I think this year was definitely Nintendo's year. But I would say actually overall, I would have to give it to a lot of the third-party years. They held it down this year with the new pieces of hardware. And I just feel like the major three just still have a lot of things incubating right now. And so the third-party years held it down, you know what I mean, with a lot of DLC drops and a lot of brand new IPs, indie games, all different types of stuff. It was a very exciting year that a lot of other names that otherwise may have gotten buried got the chance to really flex a little bit. Like, a game like Lost Judgment, I feel like really would have got swallowed in another year. And I feel like it really got the chance to kind of stand on its own.
Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Yeah, exactly. Tales of Arise, seeing a Tales game actually getting talked about is actually really exciting. So it was a great year for JRPGs and stuff like that. So I would say overall, I would have to give it to Nintendo. I think just in terms of diversity, content, and offerings from the first party, you got to give it to them. I was actually a little bit surprised by PlayStation this year. I think this was a lot quieter of a year than we've seen them for a long time now. They're not the port people, really. So to see them mostly reliant, like half of their offerings this year being kind of ports, was actually kind of surprising from them. Returnal is a banger, so I got to give them credit for that. And I love Ratchet and Clank, but Ratchet and Clank is a very specific type of game for specific types of gamers. Like, it's not... It has a lot of mainstream appeal, but it was a little light for the hardcore this year. The big PlayStation heads, they didn't really fire on all cylinders this year. That's obviously going to be a 2022 thing. So I felt like we've seen other developers do this before, where kind of PlayStation kind of took the L this year. Not in terms that they did bad, but they took a step back and was like, you guys got it, and we'll do 2022. That's what it seems like right now. The only one I would say I'm definitively let down by, I am kind of let down by Xbox this year, and not in terms of Game Pass, not in terms of the hardware, but their first party offerings, to be honest. Halo was incredible, so was Forza. Flight Simulator is Flight Simulator. I can't speak too much on that. And Psychonauts is cool, but that's kind of like, Double Fine, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and Double Fine was like, it's not like, I think are they part of Xbox Game Studios, or were they acquired? I don't know exactly how that works.
Double Fine is so mid Psychonauts 2 development. It was in development hell because it was half Kickstarted. Yeah. Xbox purchased.
They got acquired. So it's not ground up developed by Xbox.
No. Yep.
And so that's the interesting thing is, like, I thought that, going back to the launch of the Series X and all those acquisitions, that by 2021 we would have started to see all of those years of building that stable finally come to fruition, and it just honestly has not. There's just not, they didn't have a ton to show off this year, and thankfully, because of Game Pass being such a great piece of software and so many people being willing to play ball with them, specifically EA bringing their entire stable to Game Pass, and a whole bunch of games launching on there, they've had a robust offering on the Xbox. But from Xbox Game Studios, it's actually been really, really quiet. You know what I mean? Obsidian went last year, so I'm not even putting that on them. But and Bethesda, that's an acquisition, and they have lots of big scale things in development. But like, where is the initiative? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's the same. That's I feel the same way. Where though, yes, PlayStation didn't have anything crazy good, they did do some real work on these ports.
Yeah.
Where Xbox, Horizon is great, but Horizon's more Horizon in the best way possible. Microsoft Flight Simulator, that's super niche. I think I downloaded it, and one, it just was too much memory. Two, I had no idea what I was doing. That's a simulator game if I've ever seen it. Oh, yeah. And obviously Halo Infinite came out, but again, it's just been weird because we had so many flights during the year, so I feel like I've been constantly playing Halo. So by the time it was completely out with the campaign, it was just like, okay, this is there, but it has its issues. And Psychonauts 2, I've already ranted a few times, so that would be the company I was slightly underwhelmed with from their personal games. Obviously, Game Pass has been great, but I'm like, yeah, you guys didn't. No Perfect Dark at all. I mean, why announce things and then go dark on it? No pun intended, but go dark on it, and then we have to hear, we're hiring Crystal Dynamics to help us, and we're going for these third-party guys to come help us. Where are your games? I know people, Xbox got no games. I'm not one of those guys. Xbox is very, very solid library. But I need them to also not only rely on who they, because Game Pass realistically is, who's taking the bag from Microsoft. Microsoft's showing up on your doorstep with huge amounts of money, but it's also time to work on yourself. And I do think upcoming, we have wow, I can't think of this the name of the game, Ninja Theory's game, Senua's Sacrifice.
Oh, Hellblade.
Hellblade. That Hellblade sequel. It's gonna be crazy.
I thought that was gonna come out in 2021 too.
I thought that may have come out in 2021 because we saw that early on with Halo.
Yeah.
And the beginning of the announcements of the series. So, and that's a game I'm gonna lose my mind for. So, there's things coming up. I think 2022 is gonna be a very strong year. But in 2021, I understand it was a messy year. But these other guys were able to come out pretty strong. Obviously, the third party held it down a lot. So to see Xbox, this big company who has money, and the talent and the people and the acquisitions now, not deliver there was slightly upsetting. But I do know it's there. It's just we haven't hit that stride yet with them.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to make it clear that there's nothing wrong with having one or two major offerings in a year as kind of like a major publisher or developer. There's nothing wrong with that. But the thing is, like, if you're going to have one major offering, maybe two, they got to be heat. And that's been done before. Like, Nintendo in 2017 had a lot of games. They did. But that they could have just had Zelda and Mario and won that year. 2 games. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, you could take Mario, just Breath of the Wild, because that's generation defining. You know what I mean? Like, they changed the game with that one, the influence. So I'm talking about that impact coming in. It's not a numbers issue so much as I want that impact. And I love PlayStation. Ratchet and Clank, Returnal, they're great games. They don't have that impact. Just being objective with you, just being straight up with you. They don't really hit. Like, do I see in 15 years them talking about Ratchet and Clank and Returnal? Not really. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're gonna, I want something big from the big boys. And the same thing with Xbox is, like, I like Halo a lot. But, like, is that generation defining? Is that the thing that needed all those years for development? I'm not so sure. And same thing with, like, Forza. Forza is Forza. And so if you're a racing fan like I am, I think it did what it had to do. But am I, like, losing sleep about how great Forza was? No, of course not. And so that's what I mean. It's just I want that impact from the big boys. And I think Nintendo did what they had to do this year. And for me, personally, I'm just only speaking for me, Metroid Dread had that impact. It did. Mm-hmm. Not everybody feels that way. I understand that. Some people, it's like, okay, it's another Metroid game. We've seen this before. Personally, I think it's a masterclass in design. I play a lot of Metroidvanias, and I know a crappy one when I see one, and I know a good one when I see it. And Metroid Dread did exactly what it needed to do. And considering the fact that this was a dead game from years ago, and that the spirit of that retained all these years later, I think is worth being commended for. But yeah, overall, I think 2021 was an incredibly strong year for video games, and 2022 is shaping up to be just as strong, if not stronger. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see what hardware comes out. We're going to have the Playdate. We're going to have the Steam Deck. I think the Steam Deck, for me personally, is going to change the game for me. It's going to open up all these PC experiences for me. And obviously there are super demanding PC games I'll never in a million years be able to run super great on a Steam Deck. But overall, I'm going to have a handheld that runs everything better than the Switch. It runs Nintendo games better than the Switch can. Which is going to be exciting to be able to, like, and again, I'm not Mr. Piracy steal everything, but Nintendo hasn't done a great job making their back catalog available. You know who has? The PC space. Yeah, so it's been there forever. Yeah, I'm going to have everything on there. So fine, you're not going to make Zero Mission available for me. The Steam Deck will. So I'm super excited to play that. And to jump into that. So 2022 is looking good. I'm looking really forward to it. And this is probably the most excited I've been for a year in gaming in quite a while, because I feel like, and I think I said this for 2021, but it's definitely coming true in 2022, is I feel like this is the time where the three of these guys are going to be able to compete, like, for real. Nintendo's got lots of big things in the stash. Xbox finally, I feel like, should be ready to go. And PlayStation already made it clear what their plans are. So we got a war on our hands for sure.
Yeah, I do think so. I think everyone's going to be firing this year on full cylinders. I think everyone's gotten used to the way their new development cycles are for some. Some companies are adopting 4-day work days and all this
stuff,
mix up and changing up because of COVID and things. So we're having a strong year, and I always go back to I don't need 10 games from each company. You got to remember, PlayStation in 2018 gave us Spider-Man, God of War, Detroit, and that's all they needed for that
bangers.
year. I'm sure some other stuff came out, but that's what they had. So we already have Horizon, God of War, and who knows what else coming this year from
Gran Turismo for those who care, but
Gran Turismo, it is for for that small community as well. So there's a lot of rumors, a lot of mysteries behind PlayStation. I think at CES, Naughty Dog did come out saying that they're working on multiple new titles. So apparently Factions is ready to go this year, hopefully. So I think they're gonna. I think everyone's at full cylinders again. Hellblade, I believe, is gonna be this year. I think we gotta see something from some of these. The Coalition apparently has something in the works as well. So, and then Nintendo's always that wild card where they'll announce something and just a couple months later,
a random open world Kirby. They're unpredictable.
So we have that open world Kirby. We have
Arceus.
tentatively Breath of the Wild 2. We have Arceus at the end of this month. You just never know with Nintendo. So we'll see. This is gonna be a strong year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm excited. So thanks, guys, for listening on to this little bit of a longer show. We did our 2021 in review, and we'll be back not next week, but the week after. So we appreciate you spending some time with us. So this has been the NeoVintage Podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope you guys enjoyed.
And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
Take care.